All right, well, for more on President Tinubu's charge to his cabinet ministers on their KPIs and how to achieve impactful governance, we have political affairs commentator and Arise News analyst, Dr. Constance Ikokwu, joining us live from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Dr. Constance, for joining us this afternoon. It's very clear.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, yes. Well, it's clear that President Tinubu means business. He has made those marching orders to his ministers, but the question remains, will they actually stick to it? Can he force their feet to the fire in order to make sure that they stay on track of these KPIs that he's going to be creating for them?
Well, that's a big question. I think the starting point is to acknowledge that a review or a retreat actually is good for ministers and government officials, especially for first-timers. There are many ministers that are new and have no idea the depth of what is expected of them, what to do or where to go. So this is usually a good opportunity for them to join in team building, and then there's problem solving in the retreat, training and development, improvement of skills, fostering collaboration between government officials. So this is a good start for them. And then to your question, yes, you have a retreat. What do you get out of the retreat? I think it's like a gem, right? It's like a gemstone that you source, whether you source it from the miners or from dealers. So there are several processes that it has to go through. So similarly in this retreat, there are several processes, the issues that are going to be discussed will go through, whether it is from the beginning of trying to cut and polish a gemstone, categorize it, and then price it, and then market and promote it, and look for people to buy it. So after this retreat, what are they going to do with the issues that they have already discussed during the retreat? There are so many wonderful points that the president made when he was delivering his opening address to these retreat attendees. And we can talk about that more, but I think that what they do after this will be more important than the actual retreat.
Well, very well said, Dr. Ikokwu. Now, I'm wondering if you're comfortable, with the Special Advisor on Policy Coordination, Hadiza Usman, being in charge of monitoring the performances of the ministries, departments, and agencies, because it seems even the president has envisaged that some of them might have issues working with her. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's the president's call, right? He makes the decisions. He picks his appointees. There are probably reasons why he decided to pick this particular lady, a woman, to head that department and unit. And he doesn't have to give anybody explanation. If he thinks that the lady is qualified, then she gets the position. But apart from that, it also depends on how she manages her role. Does she have enough qualification and experience to manage the different egos that will come into play? Most times in Nigeria, the ministers, a lot of them are big men, so to speak. Some of them are former governors. Mind you, they have managed cabinets, they have managed an entire state. They have dealt with several different issues. So Hadiza Bala Usman has to be very smart in the way that she's able to manage that office. I think it's a big responsibility for her. I think this is the first time we're hearing of this kind of delivery office in the presidency. And everybody is expecting and looking forward to see what they have to offer. I think I would also want to sort of delve into some parts of the president's speech, which I think are critical in our discussion. So quickly, the president talked about we are not looking backwards. We can't compare and give excuses. I think it's a good thing to say, because when we look at what has happened in the past administration, or even his party, the APC, there was always a tendency to say, oh, we inherited a lot of problems, the issues are difficult to tackle, so you have to give us time. There was always that excuse all the time. So it's good that the president said that the buck starts at my table. I asked for the job, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then he also talked about we have to renew the foundation of Nigeria. A lot of people know President Tinubu as someone who used to be an activist before he came into politics. And even when he was in politics as the governor of Lagos State, he was one of those that pursued the idea of a sovereign national conference to discuss the foundation of Nigeria and how to reconstruct and how to renew it. So I hope the president knows what he's talking about. Is this just a speech, or is he ready to go into the issues of the foundation? So for instance, we're talking about resource control, we're talking about equitable distribution of resources, a state police, rotational presidency. All of these are questions that will be raised once he touches this. So the issue is that some people, when they become president, they're already running for second term. But if he decides, I'm going to run for only one term so that I can focus on the basic problems that Nigeria has foundationally and try to turn it around, everyone will be looking at the president to see if he does this.
Well, you're right. It is a good step in the right direction. But just to brainstorm, if we were given the task to come up with some specific KPIs for some specific key ministerial positions, what should some of the baseline requirements entail, in your opinion?
Well, there are people that will be in that office. I think it will be staffed if this is a serious business for them, staffed adequately, and have people that sort of write down or decide the baseline for the different ministers. But I think that I want to go back again to some of the things that the president pulled out. He talked about foreign investment. We know that recently the German chancellor was here with a team of investors, and they signed about $700 billion agreement with Nigeria for solid mineral exploration. I'm saying this because these are some of the things that will come into being, whichever the minister is involved. So for instance, the Minister of Solid Minerals. And they talked about Nigeria being at least 90% not explored. And the German chancellor also asked if they'll be able to repatriate their funds, which the president said they will look into. I think we have to be careful as Nigerians when it comes to the exploitation of resources. We see what is happening in Zamfara State, for instance. They're digging gold, and when you go there, it's so chaotic. You would think that it's a war zone. So as we are looking for investors and working with the ministers that will manage these particular ministries and the investments that will come into being, we have to be careful on how we handle everything so that it is to the benefit of Nigeria. And I would tie it into one other point that the president made about climate change. A lot of the exploration resources have been responsible for climate change issues in African countries. The industrialization that we see in the developed world affects us hugely. So when we are doing this exploration, are we mindful of conserving our earth? Are we mindful of conserving our environment? He talked about arable lands. So at least 68% or 65% of the arable land in Africa today and in the world is in Africa, uncultivated. So there is a scramble, a fight to get into those arable lands. There is also a lot of water resources that we have, so we have to, as a government, be really focused on making sure that this, whatever it is, benefit our people and that our environment is not destroyed in the name of making money or in the name of industrialization.
Now, Dr. Ikokwu, it's quite clear that there is a lack of trust between Nigerians and its leaders, and also a lack of trust in public institutions. So I'm wondering if there's a way this gap can be narrowed and Nigerians can be actively involved in the monitoring and evaluation of the performance of these ministers. Is that possible?
Well, it is possible. I think the easiest way to narrow the gap of trust between the populace and the government is to deliver results. Actually say something and walk the talk. Do what you have said that you will do. We have a record of different governments that come into office and they have good speeches, wonderful talks, wonderful retreats and gatherings and meetings. And at the end of the day, a lot of the budget is not even administered, in the different ministries. And, civil servants were part of the people that were in this retreat. So the question here is, Do you have a civil service, a 21st century civil service that would deliver on the things that you need to make progress in your country and to advance yourself economically? Are they qualified? Do they have the right education? Do they have the right skills? These are a lot of issues and a lot of work for the president. So if you want to build that trust, in the first couple of years, you want to be able to be working very fast and expediently to make sure that you have results to show at the end of each year, or even periodically you come up, engage with the public and tell them what you're doing, and they can also see for themselves that this is happening. In terms of being engaged in monitoring what is going on, I don't know how that will pan out or work out, but I guess it's also possible. There are a lot of young people that can be engaged, that can be involved. People are looking for jobs to do and trained, to work with different ministries in order to be part of the change process of the government.
All right. Transparency, accountability, and merit-based leadership. These are some of the things that we are looking for within our leaders and those in the House. Do you have any more takeaways from what President Tinubu was talking about at the retreat?
Yeah, I think, yes, there's some other points. He said that be assured that this country is one family in one house. I think it's an important point that he makes there because in the past, or even in the APC government, we had a president that dealt with people who did not vote for him like enemies. There is a difference between electioneering and election campaigns and then the actual governance. When you become president, you are president for all Nigerians. As he said, we are one family. But you have to show that we're actually one family in your appointments, in the way you deal with people, in the way you deal with different parts of the country. So it's not just about talking about it in the retreat and giving a speech. You actually have to walk the talk. So I think that's very important. And then also he talked about admitting and accepting liability. Yes, I think that's something that he should basically do. Whether there are liabilities from the previous government, there's no need to make excuses. And then he talked about there's no crime in borrowing. Yes, there's no crime in borrowing, but it depends on what you do with the money that is borrowed. Are you paying civil servant salaries with the money? Are you paying for debt? So this is important. If you're just borrowing money to pay debt, then that doesn't make any sense. So you have to generate more income in order to get out of that cycle that takes us nowhere. It talks about we have great minds, great intellectuals, great intellects. That is very correct. Nigerians everywhere around the world and even Nigeria have a lot of talents and can help Nigeria. The other question is, do they have the opportunities to do that? If there's opportunity to do that, I think Nigerians will be more than happy to contribute to governance, to be engaged, to participate, and to make sure that the country is moved forward, because I think a lot of people are not satisfied or happy with the current state of the country. There's so many other things that he talked about, but yeah, it was a good opening address at the retreat, but we're going to be looking at the government to see whether they actually deliver results for the people.
Now, the president said that the ministers will be signing a performance bond. Some would suggest this is a lack of trust or lack of confidence in their ability to deliver. And then they're wondering if indeed the president has doubts about these people in his cabinet. Why were they appointed in the first place? What do you think?
I don't think it's an issue of doubt. I think it's a way to hold them to their feet or hold the fire to their feet. In the past, it's always been the case that you have ministers who come into office and rather than serve, they are serving themselves personally. So if you're a president that wants to leave a legacy, if you're a president that wants to work hard for the people, then you have to sort of set up some type of framework to make sure that your ministers are doing the right thing. I think this is one of the ways to do this. This hasn't happened in the past. It's novel, it's new. It then depends on who is in that office and how is able to manage to actually hold them accountable. But yes, I think that every minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not only ministers, civil servants, everybody that works for the government and is being paid by taxpayers, I think they should definitely have deliverables, and I think periodically they should be evaluated. During this retreat, it is a time to reflect on what has worked in the past, on policies that have worked and policies that haven't worked, and what to do going forward. So I think all of this is very good that we are seeing. The next thing is then what happens after that when they leave the retreat.
All right. Well, Dr. Ikokwu, you've mentioned that this is the first time that these KPIs have been presented, or just any type of feedback loop in order to measure the performance of our ministers. Are you aware if this is also one of the first times that the president has gathered all the ministers in a large group like this to actually discuss with them, or is this the first time as well? And also, our former ministers, was there any other way of measuring their performance other than the speech on the roads from normal individuals who were commenting and just the lack of work being done? How was that measured before? Has it ever been measured?
Well, for this government, I think this is their first retreat. We can check that, but I think this is their first retreat. I think former presidents have always had a kind of gathering with ministers at the beginning and then periodically, if they choose to, depends on how effective they want the running of the cabinet to be. Of course, there is also the Executive Council meeting that they usually have on a weekly basis. So this is probably the first retreat for this government. And like I mentioned earlier, this is very useful, especially for ministers or government officials that are coming into government for the first time. We live in a country where people are appointed without prior experience in government. Maybe you worked for the party and you're being rewarded for all the work you did during the campaign, or maybe you have a relation that is connected to the presidency and you get a job. So this is an opportunity for them to learn. It is an opportunity to train and to improve whatever skills that you have. So I think this is very essential and critical for the smooth running of the government. In the past, I think different presidents have had different ways depending on the president and how serious they have been. I know that from 1999, the most effective government that we had was probably the government of President Olusegun Obasanjo. And the way that I measure that is that at least economically, we were growing at a very high rate during President Obasanjo's term. So there must have been a way through which he communicated with the ministers and made sure that they were there to do the work. And President Obasanjo was also someone that read everything that was sent to him. If the president is very much interested in his job as the commander-in-chief of service, because there are people that have the idea that working for government is, the people serving them and not the other way around. No, you are being paid by the taxpayers. That means you're supposed to work for the people and you're answerable to them. So different presidents would have had different ways to make sure that their ministers actually are accountable and the ministers actually deliver on the mandate that has been given to them.
Well, finally, Dr. Ikokwu, Ms. Hadiza Usman has said monitoring of the deliverables will begin in January 2024. But I'm wondering if this delay is necessary, considering the fact that the president has hit the ground running, taking a number of bold decisions. So why postpone the monitoring till January?
Well, they're probably trying to put things together, get the office ready. And if you listen to the president's speech carefully, he talked about evaluating. They've taken time to review themselves within these past couple of months. People are reading handover notes. People are making decisions. People are deciding what is important, what is not important, what do we throw out, what did not work in the past, what will work for the future. So you probably need a little bit of time to do all of this review. And then before you can so this is a new office, right? It's a new office before you can then begin to work. So I think it's okay. The most important thing is that once you have made that decision that is important to follow up on the ministers, then you actually have to do it. And so from January 2024, depending on how the office functions and performs, maybe we would see a country and a bunch of ministers that are delivering on their mandates and are performing, not underperforming.
We surely hope so. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Dr. Constance Ikokwu.